it's your friendly digital technology librarian, Christy. We have reached yet another Friday, so of course you know what that means. I have another Film Rec Friday ready for everybody. As mentioned before, we are in the midst of Women's History Month, which is my absolute favorite month for doing promos. Um, and this week, no surprise, we are going to stick with a women-centric rec list, and we are focusing in on movies about kick-butt women. And when I say that, I don't necessarily, but in many cases, mean um, women who are in action films or stories that have a ton of physicality. Yes, some of these recs are totally about that, but um, I'm also looking at female characters who just kick butt at life in general too, like successful business owners, um, secret agents. There's one film about that. I mean, just really, really kind of inspiring female characters in a lot of ways. Not all of them are traditionally inspiring. We've got a couple who are like deeply complex and complicated, but still really awesome and still really interesting characters that whose stories you will really get caught up in. So, as with every week, all of these recommendations are available totally for free with the use of your Milan-Berlin library card. These 6 titles are actually only going to come from our Hoopla digital and Canopy service, though of course you can always find tons of other films available on our CleveNet Overdrive service as well. So please do check out all of those video services. There are a ton of films that you will absolutely love available on them, even if you can't find a title that you love within these 6 recommendations. So without any further ado, I want to go ahead and get to those recs, so let's get started. Okay, so my first 3 recommendations are, as mentioned, all from our Hoopla digital service, and the first of those is for a movie called Sucker Punch. Now, I would say Sucker Punch is pretty typical of when you think of a kick-butt female action movie. There aren't too many surprises here. There are definite flaws with the movie. It's by far not a perfect feature. That said, it is very entertaining. It's from the mind of Zack Snyder, so you know, if you're familiar with his work, that it has a very specific visual style, and if you like that visual style, it is fantastic. So Snyder also did movies like The 300. So I would say these films are definitely indicative of what he likes to see on screen. Kind of gritty, dark, like heavily contrasted imagery. And that sort of thing works so well with the storyline that you've got going on in Sucker Punch. So Sucker Punch primarily follows the character Baby Doll. Yep, her name is Baby Doll. I already have plenty to think about with that, but it is a recent period piece, so it takes place theoretically in the 1960s, and this character has been institutionalized against her will. And that sort of nugget of storytelling is what allows the rest of the film to happen. For huge portions of the film, you're never 100% sure if what is going on is reality or just in her head. And both worlds feel very, very real. But when you're watching the film, it's just a crazy, crazy thrill ride. And I, again, really do like Snyder's style. I think visually his movies are so beautiful in that sort of dark, heavily contrasted way. He just has a real gift with stories that do have a lot of grit, that do have a lot of darkness and anger and frustration within the storytelling, and he is good about imbuing the settings with all of that kind of emotion. And I just find it fascinating when directors are able to do that. Like, because it's setting, you know? doesn't necessarily have to have emotion with it, but it absolutely does in his films. Um, so you've also got a ton of really, really well done action, and surprisingly good acting. When I went into this movie, I wasn't honestly expecting very much, but the main character, Baby Doll, again, sigh, is played by Emily Browning, who does a fantastic, fantastic job. She's actually one of those actresses that I've found consistently puts in a fantastic performance, no matter how ludicrous her character might be. Um, and she's been doing it for a long time now. So, uh, if you're looking for something that is very action centric, that is visually stunning, that has solid performances, and if you can get over some of the sort of triggering themes, check out Sucker Punch. It is absolutely worth a watch. Um, it's not an easy movie to like as far as storyline goes. I would say it's definitely kind of a challenging film in that regard, but it's one that I think is worth the watch if you're in the mood for something that's a little darker, a little grittier. That's definitely not happily ever after kind of storytelling. So, Sucker Punch from Zack Snyder on Hoopla Digital. Check it out. My second recommendation from Hoopla is for a movie I had no idea what I was getting into when I did, that I absolutely fell in love with, and that is The Witch Part 1, The Subversion. Now, this is a Korean film, so it is in Korean language. You will have to watch it with subtitles, but 100%, please, please, please check this out. If you like action movies, if you like complex, excellent storytelling, and let me tell you, this storyline is so engrossing. Check it out. It is really, really good. So, you've got Jaeyoon, who is your main character. She's very petite. She seems like a normal girl, but she's actually sort of this escaped government experiment. And man, she is something else. So much going on in this story, and it's just part one. Part two, I believe, is coming this year in 2021. Unless, of course, it gets pushed. So many films have. But you 100% get a full story that you will enjoy from just part one. This escaped government experiment has no memories left. She just is existing for the most part and doing a good job of it, of seeming perfectly normal until she is put in a position not to be normal. And then all heck breaks loose, and it's like action and craziness and stuff going on from that moment on. I mean, and it doesn't stop. That's the thing that I was just like, when am I going to get a break? Because, when you get into those movies where you're like tense when you watch them, sometimes you just want a little bit of a breather. You don't get a breather. It's just not like that. Once the action starts moving, it just goes. And it's really, really well acted. If you have Netflix and if you've seen Itaewon Class, the K-drama, um, the main girl from Itaewon Class is also the main girl in this movie. She's an exceptionally good actress, and she does such a good job with this role, which could very easily have been a pretty, I don't want to say bland, but that's definitely the vibe that you could get if you were just thinking about a character that does a lot of action stuff and that like plays a pretty normal teen girl, and then who suddenly is like super powered. And in any case, it could have been performed very poorly, and I could have lost interest very, very quickly, but I absolutely did not. Your villains in this are complex. In particular, one, I won't mention who, uh, because that's part of the whole storyline. But you've got very interesting villains throughout this. So much so that I cannot wait to see part two, to see more of the villains. I actually find like the darker characters in this movie so fascinating, and I'm pretty sure that kind of theme and storytelling is going to take place in the second part. But yes, if you like action, if you like complex, fascinating storylines, if you like kick butt, um, teen stories, this is definitely not necessarily for teens, but if you like stories that sort of watch a character grow a bit, like The Witch Part 1 Subversion, so worth it. Definitely check it out. It is an excellent, excellent movie. Also available on Hoopla Digital. My final Hoopla recommendation is a little bit different from the other two in that rather than being about a woman of action, is in like physical action, we're talking about a kick butt business owner. And the movie is Beauty Shop, which stars Queen Latifah, and which I absolutely love. I've seen this movie like probably half a dozen times since it came out. It's one that like a couple of my friends really were obsessed with for a while, and so I anytime I'd like stop by, they'd be watching it. It's a really like light kind of fluffy movie, but it is very funny and very enjoyable and easy to watch. It's not crazy complex storytelling. There is no like action or anything that you would think would set it apart, except the characters themselves are all really, really funny and fun to watch. And Queen Latifah's character, uh, Gina, is actually like so relatable. She is a woman who's driven to get up, create her own business because excuse me, she's tired of the way life is when she has to work for somebody else. And I think that's really kind of the impetus for so many of the friends that I have who've started their own businesses. They don't want to work for somebody else anymore because they know that they have the capability of doing what they want to do as well, if not better. And it's a very relatable story, I think. And Gina is not over the top. She's not, you know, perfect at everything at all at first, especially. I do really like that about this film. Um, Blended in with the comedy and the ridiculous situations sometimes and the ridiculous characters, because there are some like over the top characters, because you do have over the top characters in real life. Um, Interspersed with that are some real heartfelt moments of what it would be like to start your own business. And of course, like I said, interspersed with like comedic sets and comedic timing and things like that. But it is just really an enjoyable, fun, even keel film about a woman who rocks, um, and the women that she surrounds herself with. There's not, I think all of the archetypes displayed in this are, for the most part, really believable and enjoyable to watch on screen. So if you're looking for something warm and funny and just quietly enjoyable, check out Beauty Shop on Hoopla if you've never seen it before. Um, Gina's a lovable character, and she is very inspiring in a quiet kind of way, just as much as any like super crazy actiony film star would be. So again, Beauty Shop available on Hoopla Digital. All right, my final three recommendations, as mentioned, all come from Canopy, and the first of those is for a French film called Female Agents. Now, Female Agents, as I said, is a French film, so of course, French language, English subtitles, but if you have any interest in history, specifically World War II history, I strongly suggest checking this out. Regardless, it is such a cool film. Now, this is loosely based on a real person and real life events, and that to me, I I can't even. Um, it really, really adds a totally different layer to this movie. So it follows essentially four French servicewomen who enlist into the British Special Operations Executive. So we're talking about spies. These are four real spies, four female spies in World War II. And like that premise in and of itself, even if only a fraction of the things that happen in this movie are real, like it's already mind-blowing simply because I can't imagine being in the situations that these women would have been in. So their first mission is essentially to rescue a British geologist who gets caught doing, I think, reconnaissance work on the beaches of Normandy. Obviously, he's vitally important to the cause, but even more so, making sure none of the information he has, making sure none of that information gets to the opposing side is as vital as he is. So these women are essentially tasked with his rescue. Um, and the fact that these female officers would be the ones in charge in and of itself is sort of astonishing to me, simply because this is an era when female agency within the military, regardless of where you are, wasn't, something that I think I really read about anywhere, or at least not to the extent that it feels like these women are involved in the cases. Um, Now, besides rescuing this geologist, they are also then set to assassinate a German colonel. So you've got these two life or death missions, and seeing how these women weave their personal lives together with their actions as officers is fascinating, because each of them has very specific skills due to the lives that they're living and were selected specifically because of those skills. And it's just so intense for such a large part of the film, uh, that you are at times longing for a break. You are longing for a moment when it's not quite so thrilling. But it doesn't really let up. It's definitely one of those movies that's intense from beginning to end. So if you are interested in history, especially World War II history, you absolutely have to watch this. I love period pieces in general, and this one does such a good job with all of it, like the costumes, the setting, the tone of the way things are filmed. I think everything is so perfect. It definitely feels like a secret agent kind of movie, and a period secret agent movie at that. Uh, so if you like that sort of thing, please, please, please check out Female Agents. I don't think that the subtitle issue is challenging to get through. I think that they're timed very well. So even if you're not a big fan, I think you'll be able to get through it just perfectly fine. So again, Female Agents available on Canopy. My next Canopy film is called Lila and Eve. And this one, I don't recall when it originally came out, but I don't know why, because it stars Viola Davis and Jennifer Lopez, and that seems like a pretty ridiculous cast for me to have absolutely no familiarity with this film whatsoever. Um, Viola's character is a grieving mother whose son um, succumbed to a situation with drug violence in their neighborhood, and she cannot move on for obvious reasons. And Jennifer Lopez's character Eve is kind of a kindred spirit, also dealing with the loss of a child through violence. And these two women sort of bond together and end up going on a quest for vengeance. I am always a bit up in the air about vengeance films, just because I think that they can get ludicrous pretty easily. Um, I think you have to have kind of a tempered hand in order to make the characters interesting and multifaceted, rather than just, you know, person A goes on quest for vengeance. Because I think that happens a lot, where it's just like you're checking boxes off of things that your typical vengeful person does. But this one, There are a lot of twists and turns, like a lot of twists and turns, and things that I didn't necessarily see coming were pretty integral to the storyline. And the acting is very, very good. Like, with that particular cast, you're gonna get solid acting regardless. So even if you are not super into the revenge films, the acting is definitely something that elevates it from your typical options. And this one, it's just one of those sort of tense suspense thrillers that are absolutely worth watching when you're in the mood for that kind of movie. That's generally not my particular genre, but I absolutely enjoyed watching it. And I enjoyed the twists and turns. That's the thing. Like, I liked how it was not typical and it wasn't what I was expecting. So, if you get the chance, please do check out Lila and Eve for a well acted thriller. It's definitely worth your time. My last recommendation for kick butt female centric films is for a movie called Winter's Bone. Now, if you've watched movies in the last couple decades, you're probably familiar with Jennifer Lawrence, who, for a brief period of time, was in every movie, it felt like, in every awards show, and always like being ridiculous and enjoyable and entertaining in interviews. Uh, but what I always found kind of interesting about her career is one of the movies that I thought she had the most solid performance in didn't get really much attention. And I think maybe it was because it came before like the Hunger Games and whatnot, that it did have more of like a small impact on her career rather than things like Silver Linings Playbook, which I am not a huge fan of, by the by. That's the film that she won the Oscar for. And I was definitely like underwhelmed by a lot. For me, if she was going to win an Oscar, it should be for Winter's Bone because she does do an exceptional job in this movie. Now, Winter's Bone follows a teenage girl. She's about 17, I want to say, as she tries to track down her deadbeat father who has essentially put up her home, her and her siblings, her younger siblings' home, as collateral for a bond that is out on his name. Now, Lawrence's character is Ree, and she's very self-sufficient. She takes care of her younger siblings. Her mother is pretty incapacitated, and as mentioned, her father's total deadbeat. Always in trouble with the law. He's a criminal. He's 100% a criminal, and he actually is in trouble at the point of this film for, I believe, cooking meth. So, not a good guy. But she's really determined to make sure she takes care of her family. So she takes it upon herself to track him down in order to avoid losing the house because, again, it's been put up for collateral as bond. Um, as she goes on this quest to find him, so many things go on. Like, she's forced to deal with a lot of people that no teenager has any business having to deal with, and she does it well. And it's believable, though. Her character is so straightforward and determined. You get the interactions that she has. You get that she doesn't end up getting herself into more trouble than she does simply because this is a character who knows how to handle situations. You've got some really fantastic performances besides Lawrence's. You've got Garrett Dillahunt. You have John Hawkes, I want to say is his name, who you'll recognize his face. He plays her uncle. Uh, she she just does such a good job with this character, with walking that line of being precociously capable and being like film perfect, because but she definitely does walks that line so well. um there's almost like an Odyssey-esque nature to the storyline, to her quest for finding her father, for figuring out what happened, and all of the little things that keep popping up to prolong this quest that she's on. Uh, and I just really thought the storyline was so compelling. I think the characters are well written. I think they're really, really well acted. And I just kept wanting to know what was going to happen, what different things mean. At the end, there are still some questions that are left a bit up in the air, but I actually think that that's good. You don't want to know everything simply because she's not going to know everything. You're very much in her shoes, and I love that about this movie. So, of all of the films I'm recommending this week, please, please, please check out Winter's Bone. Excellent thriller, mystery tale about a girl who has plenty of capability of taking care of her family and herself. So, yeah, Winter's Bone, available on Canopy, 100% worth the watch. So, those are my 6 recommendations for this week. If you have any movies that you think we should be watching, as always, please feel free to comment and let us know below. I'm always looking for film recs because I'm always looking for new movies to watch and to enjoy. If you have any recommendations for themes that you would like for us to put together for in the future weeks, please comment and let me know about those as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you so, so much, as always, for tuning in. Please consider liking and subscribing if this little recommendations list had anything that you thought was interesting. And we will, of course, see you next week. Bye bye.